Hi, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of the Endless Celts Podcast. A very different one, our first ever episode of STATSDROP with Tony McLaughlin from Celtic Trends. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well. Doing well.
Good, man. Although you've worn the shirt when we got pummeled at Paisley, so don't know what the crack is of that. I do like it. Have to admit, I do like it. But apologies for the kind of early start here. We usually start at 8 o'clock, but this man, while he's a stat machine, he also has football to play. He's going to the fives, but we'll get cracked in. Tony, and we'll start briefly, obviously, with last season. Now, this is a new kind of venture for us as a channel. You yourself, delighted to have you on board, mate. I appreciate you coming on, and obviously, we're all learning during this process of what expected goals, all these different stats and things. But we'll start with last season briefly, and we'll move into more current situations. And Postecoglou, for me, we've covered it so much in the podcast, come in under a spotlight, under pressure straight away. The start he didn't have was that great. I think he lost 3 out of the 6 first games. Hearts, for example, beat us, and just a bit of a shaky start. But when he first came in, Tony, in terms of what you've seen in terms of progression from the team, did you notice from straight off there's a difference to this team in terms of what we're trying to do, like an identity?
Yeah, I think that was the thing with right from the start. You knew he had a plan. You know what I mean? Right away from the start, it was inverted fullbacks, because everybody talked about inverted fullbacks at the start, and it was like, well, what does that mean? What does that look like? And then you just started seeing like the early games at Dundee and St Mirren at home, and you seen the XG that we were producing, and it was off the charts, and we were scoring goals as well. But then we had the 3 tough away games, Hearts, Rangers, and Liverpool, but then never looked back. But you could see it was always going to be a long journey, and but you could see there was a plan. That was a good thing. There was a plan. I didn't think we would win the league last year. Do you know what I mean? At the start, you just thought it's going to be too much of an ask, too many new players, and as much as he's got a good reputation and good experience, it was all new to him. Scottish football was new to him, Europe was new to him, so it was always going to be a tough ask. And even the biggest Ange supporters always said that season 2 was when you see the best of Ange. So I always thought last year was going to be a challenge. So to deliver what he did last year was amazing.
I mean, like in terms of when he came in, obviously, the only time I've really seen him for the fullbacks was Bayern Munich when Pep Guardiola done it with Philip Lahm and the likes of them, world-class players, and obviously he's brought that system to Manchester City. And Postecoglou himself has said that Pep's a big, not mentor, because you can't really use that term, but he looks up to him in terms of the coaching capacity and what he brings. You've seen the connection when he managed over in Japan with the City group and that. But just to dive in the early part of the season in terms of an XG, and I'm going to give a brief overview because me, myself, expected goals, expected assists. It's all new to me. So, again, everyone on this channel is going to be learning with us as well. So, that's fantastic. But just go over it briefly. I mean, throughout the whole season, Tony at home had 84% of the wins and 68% just away. A bit of a drop off there. Do you think the away form was much of a concern last season? And people talk about tweaking tactics and tweaking all this and moving players to position, or do you just think it's one of them things to take a wee while to earn out?
No, I think so. When looking at last season, I mean, there was like, so you talk about XG, and then there's expected points sort of came about last year as well. So Stephen Russell and the boys at Cynic had come up with that, and that was quite good. And there was even there was a Rangers Twitter page, the Rangers report, and both the Rangers report and the expected points, they were saying, look, based on performances, Celtic are maybe 6 points behind or whatever, but actually on performances, Celtic's in front here. So if this evens itself out throughout the season, Celtic will come on top. Do you know what I mean? And you could just see it. Would the end of the season come too early for us? Just by the time Ange had building that team and getting through on sort of limited squad players. But no, it came right in the end. You know what I mean? And I mean, you're talking about different things, so that's why I looked at sort of season to date versus sort of last year on sort of XG and XA basically, and your expected points.
Yeah, I mean, you said something quite interesting. You were explaining to me off earlier. There's a lot of people have different views on stats and what way it goes. You said this expected points tally. I did see them tables, like we were streets ahead in terms of forming that. But how can you say that when we're from a losing position, that if it evens itself out, we're going to win the league? Because you look at it, and me myself personally, I look at points. I don't look at expected points or be like, yeah, we're going to creep up that table. People say we're playing well, but how do you collate that into not science, but like the trend of where that's going?
Yeah, so I think so from it's quite a new sort of science, and so if you look at the Stephen Russell's one, then that wasn't necessarily a predictor. That was about past performance. So it was just saying who underperforming where they should be. So i.e. maybe a bit of bad luck. Whereas the Rangers sport was a bit of a prediction one. So if you look at it from an expected goals point of view, so that if Celtic score 2 goals in the game, the expected goals was 1, right? It's maybe 1 more, but it's a very limited data set, 1 game. So if you do that over the course of a season, it should play through. So the problem with doing expected goals into overall performances, it's just the same as goal difference. So if you win 6-0 and then 1-0, but somebody else wins 3-0 and 3-0, who's more likely to win the games, etc. So expected points just looks at, well, the maximum you can get from a game is 3 points, irrespective if you win nothing. So it was looking at expected points from a game, and I thought, like expected goals, expected points is far from the perfect model. Sorry, Stephen Russell, you know what I mean? But it's far from perfect. but it's the best we have at the moment for measuring it, and it's better than just looking for points itself, because you're looking at the underlying performance and how teams have played in the past. Then that gives you an idea going forward for the future.
Yeah, I mean, to look at last season briefly in terms of obviously the stats, I've got a page open here in front of me, and I know you've done some research of your own. I mean, 2.42 goals scored over the course of the season each game, which is great. 0.58 conceded. Again, a tight defence. Now, bear in mind, hope this page I'm looking at is accurate, Tony, in case you rip me up the bits here. Like, but going across an overall season, I mean, the XG for us was 2.78 at home and 2.42 away. So scoring goals wasn't really the issue, was it, in terms of what we were doing attacking wise?
No, that's so, and also Ange had this reputation of attacking football when being maybe risky at the back, but actually our conceded goals and their conceded chances was amazing. Do you know what I mean? That was, so I mean, it's still a stat just now that Carter Vickers and Joe Hart haven't conceded a goal in the last 15 minutes over the whole of last season and this season. Because the only goal we have conceded was at Tynecastle, and they two weren't playing at the very first game. So, just different class, and making sure not to concede chances. And when I was looking at expected goals and expected goals against, look at non-penalty ones. So, there's always an argument, should you have them in, should you not? But if you look at non-penalty goals, it takes a bit of that sort of luck, or when there's a penalty, it can make a big impact in a game, and the likelihood of scoring from a penalty, like 76%, 79%, depends on the vendor. So, so I looked at something like this year versus last year. So last year we were averaging 2.56 non-penalty XG per game, and this year it's 2.44. So just a little bit down in last year, but conceded it was 0.63 per game last year, and it's 0.46 this year. So even better again for the conceding the chances. And then expected points 2.43 per game last year, and it's 2.4 this year.
Yeah, I mean, some of them are slightly down, but again, we're in the early part of the season.
Yeah, it's a small sample set, and again, it's when you're looking at an individual basis, game by game, it can vary so much. But it's just looking at the trends, and when you look at over last year and then you're coming into this year, the consistent picture is that we are generally a good goal or 2 goals ahead of our competitors in a game, which really puts us in a comfortable position domestically. And it's because of both the attacking and the defence as well.
Yeah, 100%. Just want to say, evening to everyone who's watching. Frank Brannan, old school here, Tony. Expected points went right down to Swanee against St Mirren. Again, it's horses for course, and it's the way the world's going in terms of that. And Egyptian King, apparently Ange already has his transfer targets for January. And honestly, how can you love the big man? And we'll kind of fast forwarded last season to January, and there was a couple of additions. Obviously, Riho Atate, Matt O'Reilly, Daisen Mieta, all them likes of players come in the door, and Iraguchi as well. He hasn't made quite the impact that I thought he would at this moment in time. But just to touch upon the January arrivals, I thought in terms of what we were seeing previously, the injuries and stuff, they really came in and they hit the ground, the likes of Maeda already, didn't they?
Yeah, absolutely. And Maeda was it was a fan's favourite early doors just right away because of the energy he brought. That at times now that can change. Fans can sort of find a scapegoat like they have with Aaron Moy or Maeda. But Maeda, like Abada, sometimes they don't necessarily look great on the eye. Maeda maybe for his touch or Abada for his dribbling, but the two of them have great numbers when you look at the underlying stats. And like
go ahead, sorry. I was going to say, Maeda, obviously, he was a pressing machine and he had the highest sprints, I think, across the J League in terms of what he was closing down. I think Kyogo broke the top 10 as well. But I do get what you're saying, Maeda. Like, if we look at now till last season, me personally on our previous podcast there on Monday, he's copped a bit of flack for his form. It kind of infuriates me that he doesn't take on his man because he's got the speed and he cuts back all the time looking for me a way out to get out of that situation. I know in terms of numbers and stuff, Francis, podcast member, said that he's still second to Jota in terms of goal contributions.
Well, if you look at if you can combine the contributions as in expected goals or expected assists or actual ones as well. But if you looked at assists, just assists, pure assists, Maeda last year was 0.38 a game, and that was the top. Right. Top. So 0.38 per 90 minutes. And that was the top in the whole of the league, Maeda. So you wouldn't think Maeda is the biggest creativity player, but that was the top in the league. And this year he's at 1.12, which is top again. So he's
increased.
So see, he was top last year and he's top this year as well. And you wouldn't think that. Someone said, who's top for assists per game? Maeda.
See, this is the thing then. So what does he bring to the team? We see the pressing. Obviously, that's under no question. And you made a great point in terms of obviously he's a bit uneasy on the eye at times. Yeah. He maybe doesn't. He lacks a bit. I don't know if it's confidence, but I don't. Maybe it's not his game taking on the man. But what do you think he does effectively well for the system that he plays in at the minute?
I think there's obviously that pace as you talked about, but there's also just the positioning, being in the right position. So there's times when he's tapped the ball across to Kyogo's tapped it in, and actually that's helped their XG, it's helped their goals and their assists, etc. But they make it look easy. Sometimes Kyogo makes it look easy, and Maeda for that, it's just because he's not necessarily dribbling past someone or having to sort of do a great cross. He's that his pace and his positioning's got him into a position. He just tap it across. So he's getting the numbers, but it sometimes makes it look easier than it is, and maybe doesn't get the credit for that.
Yeah, I have seen some people back him up in terms of that. And Frank Brennan comes in. Seriously, can Tony say what our expected goals for the month of October when we have 9 games to play, 5 of them away from home, and 3 of the 9 are the Champions League? Frank's an old school supporter. Like he definitely the stats side of things. Go ahead.
Tell Frank. I'll tell him what the expected points are in October. I'll tell him in November when we look back.
But I mean, another January rival was Matt O'Reilly, and I think we can all unanimously agree that this guy's been a sensation. A bit of concern for me, Tony, maybe not hit the ground running in terms of goals this season, but from what I've seen, he's still our highest assist.
Yeah.
Assist or...
So from assists point of view, last year he was quite low down, it was like 0.09 or something. I can't remember the exact detail, but it was quite low. But his XA was up there, so his expected assists. This is where you start talking about stats and the points. So his expected assists last year, it was 0.47 per game, so he was the top in the league. But yet his actual assists were low. So that's saying we would expect to get assists off him, but we didn't. So is that stat just been rubbish or whatever? But actually, when you bring that forward to this year, he's got the most assists with 5, and he's got 0.92 per game. So what that expected told us last year was actually he should be getting more assists, and maybe that just teammates not understanding his passing, etc. And it's came through this year, and not only is he still first this year, he's increased from 0.47 to 0.59 expected assists a game. So he's really kicked on, and he's when you look at Sunday and O'Reilly's not in the team, neither's Jota. First and second for expected assists in the league, and they're out. So you wonder why the creativity goes down.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, actually. And in terms of O'Reilly, I mean, do you think that there was obviously speculation with teams like Leicester and that interested in this summer, and he quite clearly said he wasn't really interested. He wants to play for Celtic in the Champions League. And one goal springs to mind, that assist for Jada against Rangers. He just dinked over the keeper, was absolutely fantastic. But in terms of what he has to come this season, what's the stats telling you, or the expected way? I think he's going to be right up there with contributions.
Oh yeah, absolutely. More so as assists rather than goals. You could probably get some more contribution in the goal side, if you know what I mean. But top at 0.59 assists per game. Yeah, he's actually delivering more than that. Actual was 0.92, but that could level itself out. But it says that he's still expected to give assists of 0.59 per game, and a really key player. And one of the things I did look at was, based on the talk about, I know we'll come on to some one game later, but based on the talk of partnerships and who's with who. So I did actually look at sort of his minutes alongside who's the other number 8 he's played alongside. So 60% of the time he's played alongside Rio Hatate, 34% David Turnbull, 2% Kyogo, just I think when Kyogo and GG were playing up front at Ross County, 1% Aaron Moy, 4% Callum McGregor. So 60% of his partnership has come alongside Rio Hatate. And I think if you're looking at O'Reilly's stats being up there, then that sort of says Rio Hatate must be doing something good to help him. And I'm a big Rio Hatate fan. So maybe I'm using these stats to tell my story, but as stats can always be. But what I did think was interesting when I dug underneath that. So expected assists for O'Reilly is 0.59 per game. But if you separate it per partner who he's with, so when he's with David Turnbull, that's 0.19 per 90. So it drops to 0.19 per 90. With Callum McGregor, it's 0.49. Kyogo, there was no expected assist, or Aaron Moy during that small time he had with them. And when he's with Rio Hatate as a partnership with the 2/8, it's 0.73 per game. So it goes from his 0.59 up to 0.73. So again, showing the effectiveness of Hatate with O'Reilly. And also the two of them play. It's not like they played against easier opposition to inflate the figures. Both of them were the partnership against Real Madrid and against Rangers. And Shakhtar as well. So I think that was interesting when I had a wee dive into that to see actually how
I think Rio Hatate, Tony, like, he is absolutely sublime. And they must complement each other so well. And for me, Hatate, that number 8 position, he's nailed that down. Like, I think he's box to box, and there's a fantastic bit of footage of him when he takes the throw-in from Juranovic against Real Madrid, and he hits the volley and the one-time pass over the other left-hand side. He is a fantastic footballer, isn't
he? Yeah, unbelievable. And I think the good thing about Hatate, if you were having a one-to-one with Hatate and talking about performance, has he living up to his potential? Nowhere near it. He's got so much more to give, absolutely so much more to give.
Yeah.
He's not. We've not seen the best of him by far, and I think once we do, then he's definitely going to be a joy to watch.
And the Celtic boardroom and me going dollar bills, you know what I mean? That's what they'll be thinking when they're getting that big man up the scratch. But we'll kind of move on into this season, and we'll touch upon, first of all, the Shakhtar Donetsk game. Now, for me, it was quite interesting. I thought we played really well. Now, from the naked eye, again, this has come across for me, just seeing what I can see on the pitch. I thought we dominated the game. I think the stats do show that in terms of possession. I think our expected goals were something like 1.51, and theirs was 0.51 at times in that match. But what they've done really well for me is they've done kind of what Madrid did, but on a lesser scale. They kind of sucked us in and then broke on the counter. I thought their left-hand side winger, Modric, he played against Scotland last night, although he didn't have a great game, but he was fantastic against us. And then you look at our performance, there were so many missed opportunities in the second half. And just a quick one there. Obviously, we can go into the ins and outs of it in a wee second, but do you think it's a bit concerning so far in Europe we haven't been clinical enough, taking our chances?
Yeah, I mean, so in that game, I think the expected stats was at 1.4, so we scored 1 goal, so we've scored less than expected. There is that. I think Europe's still going to be a learning curve for us. As I said, it's new. It's new to Ange, and against Madrid,
You've disappeared.
Yeah, against Madrid, we went toe to toe to them for 50 minutes, but we just couldn't see that through. So there was a learning there. And then Shakhtar, it was a case of like, well, we tried to pace ourselves, but actually we should have killed them off. And it was interesting just looking at Shakhtar as well. It was just for that 29 to 38 minutes, 82% of their XG came in that 29 to 30 minutes. So a 9-minute spell, 82% of their XG came from, and they had 2 box shots, only 2 shots in the box, only had 2 shots on target, and it was similar to when they played Leipzig as well. So when you looked at the Leipzig game, the expected goals was all in Leipzig's favour, and it was some breakaways, very very limited shots. I think it was 3 shots on target might have been against Leipzig, and they've done the same again. Do you know what I mean?
I'd say in terms of obviously looking at this broadly, the stats, we had 56% possession, 18 shots to their 8, with 1 card, 5 corners, and then obviously the XG in that as well. But see, for me, you look at the lineup and you bring it back and you strip it down. Do you think there was maybe a mistake starting with Kyogo up top? Giakoumakis come on, he made a big difference in that second half, and there's a lot of people, obviously, physicality and Kyogo's movement, you can maybe mismatch that. But I think even in that St Mirren game, which we'll touch upon soon, Giakoumakis for me was a big miss. Do you not think he's been missed out in some of these games, what he can provide to the team?
Yeah, I'd probably disagree with the Shakhtar. I would say that Kyogo's probably the right fit for that European game. But it's against St Mirren, absolutely. That was the biggest surprise for me. Was Giakoumakis never played against St Mirren. Both for the game style, and it would have suited him, and also to give him a bit of game time because he's not getting it as well. So I think for me, Kyogo probably against Shakhtar was probably the right. I was a bit surprised that we had both Haksabanovic and Jota.
Yeah, that was a surprise.
Because when you come into the St Mirren game, I'm actually surprised we never had one of them against St Mirren. But when we had both against Shakhtar, I was a bit surprised that Maeda never played. Just for the same reason you would have Kyogo just for that European game. But maybe just because of Shakhtar sitting back, and we thought we'd have to take them on. And you don't know what Ange said to players beforehand, who's definitely going to come off at half time, 60 minutes or whatever.
Yeah.
But it was definitely an opportunity missed against Shakhtar, given the short period of time that they had any expected chances.
I think as well, what was striking to me was it was a bit like Shakhtar done a cut and run. They just kind of took their opportunity when it presented itself, and that was it. And another big talking point for me, Joe Hart in that game, particularly, he's been called in for a bit of, obviously, people giving criticism. Me, yes, I did. In the last podcast, I thought he could have done better with one of the goals of Paisley, and the goal he conceded to Shakhtar. The position for me, it was all wrong. He was just like that. He seemed to duck. What was your opinion on that one? And in terms of a goalkeeper, do you think he's not the right? He's excellent, but how do you think he's getting on, developing at Celtic?
So I think if you talk about that goal in particular, I can see both sides. I can see someone saying that should have been better, but I can also see actually it was just a freak when it was like just with the way it came at his face and it was past him with power a bit too much. So I can see both sides. I think he's came in at a time where, for me, Barkas was the worst goalkeeper I've ever seen at Celtic. I was in Santa Ponza recently, and I remember speaking to some guys in the pool, Celtic supporters and things like that, and one of them was saying Celtic have never had good goalkeepers, and he was slagging Patty Bonner, and we were talking about Roy Baines, and we were talking about all our keepers, and I had a good laugh talking about it. But I'd say all the poor keepers, Barkas was got to be the worst, even though he had different attributes about maybe ball at his feet, and when you start going into goalkeeping stats, etc., and cross balls, etc., and there is an argument. But you can look at the other sides of the stats. If you're maybe just good at shot stopping, you maybe get away with not being great at shot stopping if you've got all that. But when you're actually poor at shot stopping, you can't be a goalkeeper for a big team when you would just not even diving. So when you had Barkas and you were trying Bain and Hazard, and it was in and out, and there was no number one, just to get somebody like Hart, who's not done many mistakes, he's been pretty solid, he's had the odd good save. I think his fans were probably pretty happy with that. Also, the fact he gives a bit of leadership and just his sort of profile. But where we are now, and we want to go to the next level, you want a keeper that's actually going to pull you out of the bag. Like a keeper that's say, by the way, we were behind there against. I can't believe we got a draw against Madrid because they were all over us, but that keeper made like saves. So like Fraser Foster did. Do you know what I mean? And I don't know if Hart's got that in him to be that outstanding keeper. He's pretty safe, but
he is safe. But
we want to go
for me, the biggest issue for me, the next level thing, and Egyptian King comes in here. Barkas couldn't catch a bus at Buchanan's bus station. But I mean, in terms of obviously Joe Hart, now, I remember when he first joined us. Now, this is obviously getting off the cuff here a wee bit. So, I mean, there was a thing saying about, I think it was Conte as manager at the time at Tottenham when he left, wasn't it? It was Conte, wasn't it? I think it was, and he was questioning. And he was questioning his ability to dive down low and dive to his left, and said he doesn't have no strength for a keeper and that. But I'm not saying I'm believing that, but I'm along the lines of what you're saying. For that next elite level, Joe Hart's amazing, 100% what he brings. But there maybe you can do better. You can always do better. But obviously he's 35 and stuff, so things will tell. Siegrist, come in. What do you think about Siegrist, by the way?
I think if you go back to your Neil Lennon's team and we replaced Barkas with Siegrist, or Lennon was a manager, etc., you would say pretty good because he's always been a pretty good goalkeeper. I'm surprised by the Siegrist thing because I think he's a good keeper, but I don't think he's necessarily got what the abilities and attributes that you would want from an Ange goalkeeper. That playing from the back, etc. And given the fact he's going to come as understudy to Hart, and you're not going to take it as a bit of surprise, whereas you would expected us to sign a backup keeper who did have that, who could be a bit patient and eventually become our number one, and then you've got that ball-playing goalkeeper. So what's the long-term aim for Siegrist? Is the long-term aim for Siegrist to come in and replace Hart? And if so, then we're going to continue with that non-ball-playing goalkeeper. Or is he just to back up Hart? And then when Hart's time to move on, we're going to sign another keeper. I just thought it would have been an ideal time to bring in that keeper who can play with the ball at his feet. He's a backup if Hart gets injured, and then if we could give him the odd game in the league, bring him in a development plan, and maybe it'd be Toby Oyemi and the B team. Maybe that's a plan for him, but you don't know. But yeah, it was a little bit surprising. But maybe Ange just thought that actually, if Hart gets injured, I don't trust Bain enough. So actually, I'm thinking short term. Short term is I need a keeper that I can rely on if Hart gets injured. So Siegrist is maybe a relatively cheap backup to secure. Yeah. Well, that maybe that's.
I think as well, it's quite interesting that both goalkeepers struggle with their feet. Joe Hart obviously knows it from playing with Pep at City, and so he has a bit of experience. But in terms of doing the things that likes of Allison or what do you call Ederson does at City, it's quite a long way off. And I want to say here, Frank Brennan, that was the manager before Conte, the ex-Wolves guy, so it was, you're 100%. Dark Knight, my wee brother's in. And yes, Daniel, there is a podcast on Friday. You've asked that. There definitely is one tomorrow as well. But in terms of kind of rounding off the Shakhtar game, we played really well against Madrid, but we blew out about 60 minutes. Shakhtar stung us on the counter for their goal, and they kind of soaked up all their pressure. And I'll bring it back to you. In terms of what we're expecting in this group stage, whether it's expected goals, expected points, where are you sitting in that one at the minute?
I think it's a hard one to sort of really put your neck on the line, because on one hand, yeah, we did get countered by Shakhtar and there was only that 9-minute spell for XG, but looking at the possession and the passing stats versus each other, if you looked at the not to 15 to 30, the 15-minute trends, we were ahead on passes versus Shakhtar apart from 2 spells in the game, and it was 15 to 30 and 30 to 45. So that 15 to 30 was just before that 9-minute spell, so don't know if that meant it was coming or not. You never tell, but there was just the 2 bits in the game. I think, so from an ELO rating, going into more stats, ELO rating, Shakhtar are 69 and Celtic are 80, and they put it in a bit of comparison, Rangers are 60, so that's a.
And what is ELO?
So ELO is there's a website, it does the rankings, so it's basically a ranking of teams in Europe, and and it's just more realistic than like the coefficients, because the coefficients takes into account in previous years, country coefficients. So it takes into games like in their own league, takes in games in Europe, and for me, it's the best ranking system. It's not perfect, but it's the best ranking system to rank teams in Europe. So Rangers are 60th at the moment, Celtic are 80th, and Shakhtar were 69th. So we were up against a difficult team. However, Leipzig are 27th. So that shows you what we're up against going into the next game. And it's a tough game. But I think if we beat Shakhtar at home, then we beat them in the head-to-head, get 4 points. They've got 4 points. And hope they get beat their other games, which they could easily do. And then you're talking about their third, and third's fine for me. Do you know what I mean? So, and then that's assuming 2 defeats of Leipzig. So, I think I'd be confident with us getting third. And you never know how we perform against Leipzig. Get a draw there, and then we're probably in a good position to get second.
Yeah, I think for me, I'll stick to what I said. I want us to aim for second. That's the bar for me. I think we have no reason why we shouldn't get in here. And I think this is quite funny. Merle Watt, think we all need a stat dictionary. As I said at the start of the show, this is a learning process for myself, as it is for the viewers, and even Tony as well. Even though he knows his stuff and what he's talking about, we're all learning at the same time. It's a brand new show that we're doing. But we'll move on to kind of round it off, and that's the St Mirren game. Now, you're wearing the absolute shambles of a top that people said was a strip clash at some points with the shorts and that. But the whole thing, I had a bad feeling from the start, Tony, if I'm honest. And looking at it, I remember they were playing a flat back five. We struggled to break it down. There was no wide men taking their players on. As you said, Jada, Haksabanovic were nowhere to be seen until the second half. Giakoumakis, I thought it would have been a perfect day for him. And I know you want to talk about Aaron Moy, so this is the chance to get Big Moy into the discussion. I know he played a full 90 minutes last night for Australia against New Zealand, so he definitely is fit, but is he the right fit for Celtic? Me, personally, not. But we'll look at the over contrast and possession stats. 20% for St Mirren, 80 for Celtic. 18 shots for Celtic, 5 for them. 6 corners for them, 7 for us, and then fouls for 15 to 11. Our expected goals were 2.08. And for me, it was probably the worst performance I've seen in the whole year. I know we weren't beaten the whole year, but it was absolutely dreadful, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, as you say, it started off with bad, do you know what I mean? So I'm playing football tonight, and if there's people would say, we wear bibs, do you know what I mean? We're just old amateurs, and we're going to wear bibs. So I thought that was a disaster from the start. But yeah, no, I've been looking at, and this is the thing as well, so people will say, oh, it was nothing to do with stats, why we got beat. It was just slow and ponderous, etc., which is all true. But the stats are interesting just to actually look and see, what more can they tell us? So it's just some things, and is there a bit of luck? Are we overreacting, or is there a bit of underlying bad performance? Should we be worried, etc., etc.? So St Mirren had 4 shots in the game. They just had 4 shots, and they had. So another one for the Stats Dictionary is XG per shot. So right. XG per shot is a very good measure just to see sort of how effective you are. So St Mirren had 0.2 XG per shot, and that's the highest of any team in the league this season in any game. So was that a bit of luck, or did we make it too easy for them? I don't know. But on the contrary to that, Celtic's XG per shot was 0.057 basically. So that's half of the average. The average for the season is 0.129 XG per shot. So it's half of the average. And there's only once we've done lower than that in Angie's time. And I think this is the bit that comes interesting. So only once we've been lower than 0.057 in Angie's time. And it was December in St Mirren when we were 0.055. So that's something that jumps out, do you know what I mean, right away, that actually St Mirren are just not allowing us good opportunity chances.
Yeah. I think Brown Warrior, now let me hear you on this one, because this is what I thought as well. The whole thing started with moving McGregor out of his key deep road. at me. Technical disaster class from Anne's. McGregor is key to Anne's. Well, what do you think about that? Because I personally think that's 100% true. I thought I know people say you get a lot more out of McGregor in the 8 or 10, but me personally, he's our best number 6, and I think moving him out of there is absolute. It was disastrous. I thought Moy. I know you're going to speak about Moy. He was at, for me, he was useless. I used the pun on the podcast. There's use for him coming off the bench, but starting, he's useless. I just thought he was slow. He always picked the easy pass. It slowed everything down. There was no cohesion. The wide men, again, didn't take no one on. It was just an overall bad day at the office. But them key points from Brown Murray are there. McGregor moving, think that caused an issue?
Yeah, and not necessarily McGregor moving. I think... So, it's a hard one to talk about the changes, because why has Ange done it? Is it to rest players, or more importantly to give players minutes? So if Moy's coming in now and again and Ange thinks, actually, I need to give him time to get into the team, I can totally understand Moy coming in and playing the number 6 position. But if it was for me, then rest McGregor. Just rest him then. Why put him forward? And then it's just it's a midfield that's not conducive to creating chances when you've got no wingers that are conducive to creating chances as well, and also when you've got a weakened defence as well. So I wasn't against the 6 changes. I think it was more I was against the team that he picked. And the biggest surprise, as we talked about, was Giakoumakis not playing, because for me, one, the game style would have suited him, but two, give him some minutes and build his confidence up as well, get some goals in. The reason I was talking about Moy was, so yeah, looking at some stats versus McGregor, there was a couple of things. So if you look at stats versus McGregor, he had 51 passes where McGregor had 82, but 39 in the second half. So he had more passes than McGregor. If you look at 94% versus McGregor's 93, and an XG of 0.1 versus McGregor's 0.03, 5 out of 5 accurate long balls to McGregor's 1 out of 1, 4 recoveries each. So you could look and see, is it about passing, or is it percentage, or maybe they're just too safe? Maybe that's not what we need. Maybe we needed some risky ones from Hatate. And there was actually a percentage of, I had it there, but I've lost it, but percentage of passes that were long balls, I think it was slightly, sort of back and forward passes, it was slightly more for McGregor. So McGregor had a higher percentage of backward passes when Moyes getting slagged for backward passes. So that was some stats. Was interesting.
That's interesting.
And the reason I've done that, I'm not defending Moy. Moy was poor, and it's not on here to say Moy was poor. But where I'm coming from is say McGregor was an 8 and Moy was a 1. Where I think it was more closer to McGregor was a 6 and Moy was a 4. Do you know what I mean? So I think the difference between the two of them is a lot closer than people think. Not excusing Moy, but I'm just... So that was one of the stats. Then there's the visuals. So if you watch the visuals, so Moy, at that particular time, he'd switched positions with McGregor. So McGregor was a defensive midfielder. And if you watch McGregor, and this is not a huge blame at McGregor, although I do think people are frightened to have a go at McGregor. And some people like Moy or Maeda are easy. But so McGregor was a defensive midfielder at that time. O'Hara's making the run.
Is this in the second half, is it? Is this the second half of the goal? Oh, the first goal.
So Moy and McGregor have switched positions at that time. And McGregor's a defensive midfielder. Moy lets O'Hara go. But McGregor's still the defensive midfielder, not marking anybody, running back. But he could have picked up the runner. Yeah, someone else mans, but part of that being a defensive midfielder is pick up the man. So if you watch the goal again, watch who McGregor's marking, Martin Lobday. Moy's definitely at fault because it's his man. I get that. But there was just that visual, there's the stats. And the other thing, if you go back to Matt O'Reilly and the people he's with, so this is the one I wanted to look. So if you looked at Moy with the two players, when he's played, who's the two other midfielders? So 95% of the minutes, Callum McGregor is played alongside him. 83% is David Turnbull. 11% is Matt O'Reilly. 7% Rio Hatate. And 5% James McCarthy. So if you go back to like these stats we talked about earlier, how O'Reilly's really great, how Hatate makes him great. Yet Moyes never really played alongside Day 2. She's never been given that chance. When
Moyes
been playing, he's playing alongside McGregor, who, as you said at the start, questions whether McGregor is as effective as he used to be in an 8 position, and David Turnbull, where we're saying he's not effective. So it's like when you bring a young player into a team, or you're bringing maybe an inexperienced player into the team, etc., then you want them. This is the bit for me, is if you bring in someone into the team, you want your 10 best players, and then you bring in that left back for his first game, or you bring in Turnbull when it's 10 players. So I think that's the biggest thing for me, that when Moyes been playing, he's not played alongside our best other 2 midfielders, O'Reilly and Hatate. That doesn't excuse him for his performance, but that just says actually we have to bear in mind that he's not necessarily been helped, and just be that balanced.
I mean, for me, I think that it's going to take a lot to change my mind on what I see from Aaron Moy. I just think he runs like lard, mate. He turns like a bus. That injury, I think, has done him no world of good. The MCL he done earlier in his career, and obviously he went to China and things like that to play, and he's come back into the competitive league again. But just to kind of go back to, you mentioned Turnbull there. Why do you think he's hit like a sudden dip in his form? Because for a while he was our most, in that bad spell under Lenny, he was our most effective player. Moving into the new season beyond, he was scoring goals for fun. Now he doesn't seem to be clicking. Do you think his confidence is gone because like Hatate, O'Reilly are getting in, or is it just a case of he just needs to improve, good old training?
I don't know the answer to the question, but just to back up your thoughts on the stats. So last year he was 3rd in the league for expected assists per game at 0.41. And now, I don't know the position, but he's dropped to 0.27. So that's dropped. So that backs up your initial thoughts with stats. The reason, I'm not sure. Well, again, he's coming on into a game. So I did have a couple of games when Hatate was out injured. So he had his opportunity there. And I thought he was okay in pre-season. But yeah, after that, there's something seems to be missing. So I don't know. I don't know the answer for that. But I think for me, it'll be interesting to see Abogard, because I think he brings something different, and something that's really been missing is that defensive ability and the back. Because I looked at some stats versus him versus McGregor, and you can really see the difference in styles.
He's more of a combative midfielder, isn't he?
Yeah. And the tackle, and so if Abogard's playing on Sunday there, it might make a difference, because the 2 weaker centre halves have got a better protection. But again, when you're playing against a low block team, you probably need a McGregor type in that 6th position to help sort of break up the opposition. Then O'Reilly and Hatate are just by far the best number 8s we've got. And I think Turnbull's okay to come in if maybe O'Reilly's injured or something like that. But I think the problem is just the combination on Sunday. The 3 of them just didn't work.
Yeah, 100%. I think Patrick McLaughlin's in here. I don't know if this is correct. You can maybe say this. Abogard averages 8.7 tackles a game. I read Monty McGregor and Beaton averaged no better than the 5 between them last season. I mean, if that's correct, then as you said, we're on to a player with him, and if he brings that combative style, I think since Brownie left, Tony, that's been a major issue for me. I know previously that Postecoglou was saying that he didn't want to sign a defensive midfielder, that wasn't the style, but he eventually compromised and got him. Like,
yeah. I was trying to look at some stats. 62% win rate of tackles. McGregor was 55. Interceptions 2.19 versus McGregor's 0.73, and clearances sort of more. So Abogard on tackles and that defensive is he looks like on paper anyway, he looks a bit of a rock, you know what I mean?
100%, mate. And I'm aware it's come up to your 5th time, so we'll wrap it up. And this has been our first episode of StatsDROP with the Endless Celts Podcast. Tony, have you enjoyed it, buddy?
Yeah, no, it's been great. I think it's good just to sort of talk about it, and you get some things wrong or get some challenges. I mean some decent challenges, as in what about this rather than just the ones you get on Twitter like XG's pish. There's plenty of good challenges you could have to XG out there, and it's all very new to us all. And when you're doing a lot of these things manually, there's plenty of challenges out there. So when there are ones like that, there's more to have and talk about. But just when you looked at that St Mirren game, just the XG and the post shot XG as well. So that's the shots on target, and 0.51. That was the second lowest under Ange as well. And just little things like that. When St Mirren, we're told before the game, worried about the set play, but they were 11th in the league for XG for set play. So I think it was just one bad day at the office, but everything went wrong. Yeah.
I think when you look at it as well, it's like saying watch their set pieces is lazy punditry, isn't it? They haven't quite done the research, so they're just kind of putting out stereotypical kind of saying out for a team who's going to take their chances against Celtic, and they did, to be fair, the 1-2-0. But I think you'll be back on the show. Let me see, Thursday the 6th of October. We're doing this bi-weekly.
The only that might need to change it a little bit for that Thursday because I'll be in Leipzig I'll be on my way back from Leipzig.
We'll do it the Friday or Saturday, whatever works.
Yeah, we do it Friday. Yeah, because I'm going to Leipzig. Me and my son are going to Leipzig, so I'll be on the way back. I don't know what time I come back on the Thursday. I can't remember, but it might be late on.
No, that's grand. But as I said there, I hope you enjoy it, by the way, Tony. But it's going to be a bi-weekly show. Just looking back at hopefully 2 games. We're kind of doing it that way, so there'll be 2 games to talk about: a European game and a domestic game, which is quite good to get stuck into. And Tony, mate, thanks very much for doing it, and we'll see you next time. Until
invite me on.
Perfect, mate, perfect. And until next time, well, till tomorrow actually, and I'm hosting the game. Stay well and keep safe. Hail, hail.
Yeah, cheers.